So with that said and done, I'm ready to invite my fellow speakers up, and let's begin. So hey, Ted. Hey, John. How you guys doing?
Good, thank you.
Wonderfully, thank you.
So we're going to talk about some of the projects that you guys are involved with, and first and foremost, the main one that I think is resonant with the topic here is Racing Extinction. Let's talk about it for a second, and then we'll play the trailer. You want to just tell us a little bit about your personal sort of relationship to the project, and
Sure.
We'll just use that as a preface.
To help you understand who I am, my name is John Hoffman, and I have the great privilege of running documentaries at the Discovery Networks. So my job is to find documentaries, particularly for the Discovery Channel, but we have a number of channels, whether that be Animal Planet, the Science Channel, Learning Channel. And I've been in that job for about a year and a half. And that can mean I commission films, or it is acquiring films. And Racing Extinction was the first film that I had the privilege of acquiring, and actually learned about the film about a month before I started the job. And when I opened the Sundance catalog and saw this film by an Oscar-winning director, Luis Hoyos, who had won the Oscar for a film called The Cove, which was an incredibly brave film that won the Academy Award that documents the slaughter of dolphins in a particular Japanese cove, and revealed that story to the world and showed how the power of documentary and storytelling to build awareness about practice that I would just assume the vast majority of the world is unaware of. So I went to my future co-workers and I said, I think that we have to buy this film. And it was the topic, it was the Sundance premiere, it was the filmmaker, and it was gut that when we saw it, that we were going to believe that Discovery was the right platform for it. So that's how Ted and I met. But maybe I think it is, if we roll the clip, I think it'll provide the context for why that was something that we felt, once we saw it, we had to have.
Okay, so let's roll the clip, and Ted, we'll get to you right after the clip.
No problem.
What's happening now is unprecedented in Earth's history.
Why would we want to disrupt something that took billions of years to evolve?
We need to fight it on all fronts.
I think it's dawning on us now that this is the big one.
OPS is a group I formed.
It uses covert operations to expose harmed endangered species.
We're doing an order here. One bottle cam.
Right there's the lens.
2 buttonhole cameras.
Check 1, 2.
Oh, that's good. Just about everything endangered in the world is for sale in China.
Look at this stuff. Endangered, highly endangered, highly endangered.
The more illegal it is, the more you have to go to the back rooms.
We're definitely not welcome here.
Oh my gosh! There's things going on that are probably not safe to talk about.
Climate is controlled by the ocean.
And we're dumping so much carbon in the oceans, it can't take it anymore.
We found this guy, Mr. Lee.
He's culling and processing whale sharks.
Nobody had ever gotten a camera in there before.
We run into people with badges and uniforms, strip off all this stuff, throw it over a wall.
Is it the basking shark oil?
Jesus. This world is absolutely insane. The wildlife trade is second only to the drug market in the world. It's that lucrative. We need a getaway driver, and I knew one of the best.
I love it.
To create a heist, to hijack the world's attention.
I think we want to put in an order for a car today.
Excellent, we'll take one.
Blow the lid off this place, right?
There's been 5 major extinctions in the history of the planet.
This may be the 6th.
When you're talking about losing all of nature, it's not a spectator sport anymore. Everybody has to become active somehow. The idea is to inspire people.
Imagery is very powerful.
If you can reach people, you can change them.
We can make this happen. We need people to understand it's worth doing.
People that have been in the business that don't even bother.
But better to light one candle than curse the darkness. There's so many people who sit back and say we're screwed. But you know what? That one candle, maybe someone else with a candle will find you. And I think that's where movements are started.
All right, what a wonderful film and very powerful. Thank you. So, Ted, let's hear because you've been working with Paul Allen's group, Vulcan, and just by way of giving a little bit of context, you want to tell them how you guys intersect and where's the overlap?
Great, sure. So if you look at the different issues that were included in that clip, or in the trailer rather, at Vulcan we are looking for and working on projects that are telling story about a lot of different topics, but many of them are captured in that trailer. Looking at conservation, looking at different species that are under threat of extinction, looking at climate change and related issues, and then Racing is quite a big film that covers a lot of those different topics. And so at Vulcan, we met the team that made the film about 8 or 9 months. We've been talking to them for a long time, but 8 or 9 months before they premiered at Sundance. And they had come away from that experience with The Cove, like John mentioned, where they had what wound up being an incredibly successful film, winning the Academy Award, but they were actually surprised by the number of people who approached them to say, well, what can I do? What can I do? And they made this film. They thought that's what we can do, is just get people to watch the film, but they realized they didn't have all the answers, nor did they have the sort of network and the resources and the team together to actually facilitate the answer to that question and putting together the resources that you need to put together to empower audiences to actually take action. And so Vulcan came on board in actually a unique way. Normally we are co-producing films, or we are working directly with filmmakers on the actual production of content, and then working with those teams with a distribution partner, for example, like a Discovery, or also working on the engagement campaign. But this is one where we came on late in the process, actually, to help specifically with getting the film a big platform online, building out partnerships with NGOs, but really trying to position it as a tool for longer term action, certainly around the broadcast on Discovery on December 2nd, this past winter, but moving forward as well. And it's some of the stuff I can talk about, and some of the things that we've done since that time.
All right, so John and Ted, one of the things that we've seen over the course of today is, say for example with Kurt Guyette and with Amy Goodman as well, is that advocacy and commercialism are not necessarily mutually exclusive. And I'd love to hear you guys talk about that, because there are, people in the room who are doing stuff with like zero budget, and then all of a sudden you guys, millions, or is there a role of cultural capital in this? How do you develop an audience that's mostly based on activist work? Do you feel that's a credible sense of market, or a lot of times they're like, oh, we can't do more political or more progressive film because there's no market for that. But you obviously have proven, I remember you were citing some great numbers, like 30 some odd million people saw that without the normal, kind of promotion.
So a lot of people saw Racing Extinction, which is we're very, very excited about. We were able to have our 220 nations and territories where we have Discovery channels all air the film in prime time on the same day. So it started in New Zealand and went around the world. So I think this was a demonstration. This is a demonstration of the power of television as still the dominant screen in the culture. When you look at the studies about how people are using media and their different screens, they might be on the screens, multiple screens at the same time, but television is still what people spend the most hours watching. So this was known to Louis, and all of his team is known to Vulcan, that having a television broadcast was central to getting Racing Extinction out into the world. And Racing can be found in many other ways, and it had a brief theatrical window, but the central to everything that Vulcan wanted to see accomplished with this quote sale of racing and how it would be presented to the world was its television life. So we were very privileged to get those rights, and are unique in the ecosystem in that we can we are present in every country of the world. So it was viewed by 36 million people that night, which is a substantial number of people. In the world in the US, it was the highest rated documentary over the past 3.5 years. So how does that happen? That happens for a number of reasons. It happens because of a collaboration with Vulcan and what made the film appealing to us, not only because of the content, not only because of the quality of Louis' filmmaking, but also this collaboration with Vulcan that does make for a sort of public-private partnership or a philanthropic, corporate partnership where there's the ability to use the Vulcan has the knowledge and the confidence that a lot of people are going to see it. And we have the confidence because of the resources of a Vulcan to a project to know that there's going to be a level of engagement and investment in engagement that's going to be beyond what we would ever do. And some of you might have heard me speak with this group when I was at HBO about a project called The Weight of the Nation, which was about obesity, which I had the privilege of running when I was at HBO. And we had substantial support from Michael and Susan Dell Foundation and Kaiser Permanente for that, for the same reason, that these foundations or nonprofit corporations knew that the content was going to reach millions of people because of a commercial platform. And it was therefore a worthy investment on their part to extend the reach of all that content through a lot of different engagement campaigns. So I think it's a unique model to some extent that I've had the privilege of working in, of bringing these worlds together. But the numbers, when you talk about, and I think you're more familiar with the numbers than I am, but the numbers that were reached through all the engagement campaigns around racing are sort of crazy high in terms of how many people were reached.
Right, and just to add to that, I think it's a combination of the quantity of people who watched, but also, just to use this word, the quality. And what I mean by that is that by putting a film on a platform like Discovery's, you're not only preaching to the choir, right? Like Discovery audiences, and you know them far better than I, but the Discovery audience isn't always the people who are going to be tuning in to watch the next nature documentary or the next climate change documentary. It's people who are tuning into other programming on Discovery. So there's a huge opportunity there to get this content, an exciting and engaging and dramatic film like this, in front of people who normally are watching something else on Tuesday nights. And that's important just from an activist perspective, because if we're ever going to move the needle on these issues, we can't keep on talking to the choir. The other thing, though, I think by getting it in front of so many people, what comes with that is the press, right? When 35 million people watch any documentary, people are going to take notice of that. And so the media starts covering it. It opens doors to other opportunities, which means that we can start taking the film and using it in some of the ways we've been using it in the last 6 months since the broadcast, with specific legislative campaigns, for example, in the states of Hawaii and in Oregon, fighting for legislation to stop wildlife trafficking and things like that, to use it on college campuses and things like that. And those doors, the calls are coming in, having worked on lots of other documentaries and other campaigns where you're trying to pick up the phone and call and say, hey, we've got this great tool. We're actually in a position where people are calling us with great ideas. Artists are reaching out to us saying, I've done this, I saw the film, and we're doing this amazing comic strip series, just sort of showing how we can save our oceans. Kids writing in examples and things like that. You either buy that sort of attention, right, or you use a platform like a Discovery.
Let's unpack that for a second, because I think what's fascinating is I don't think you can buy that kind of attention.
Right. Yeah.
That's where the role of sort of new terms economists are using, like cultural capital. So you guys activated kind of a resonance base in the activist community, that there was a lot of overlap with people who are concerned about animal rights, extinction issues, and so on. But what I'd love to hear is, because you're looking at non-normal methods of getting films out. It had brief theatrical. The word of mouth was much bigger. I mean, it's not every day you have 30 some odd million people seeing a doc. So I'd love to hear maybe, as we transition to the next situation, maybe some closing remarks about how more independent filmmakers, if you had any suggestions or ideas of how learning from your best practices, what would they do?
My job is to find great storytellers and either enable them with resources or to recognize a great film and give it a platform. It all comes down to people using the medium of their choice in the best possible way and finding artists who are just great at their craft. And I have to find something that will resonate with a mass audience. It's mass media. And so that actually turns out to be very, very hard. And finding people who know how to use that medium. Louis devoted many years of his life to making this film, and he was at it long before he and I intersected. But he and the team that he's built have an uncanny ability to use imagery to make a point. Other people use words, Louis uses images. And so I just feel that talent will always surface. And it will be found, it will be talked about, and it'll eventually make its way to a platform. That's just my.
Just I know because we want to take some questions, but one thing to add to that I think is obviously when you have someone like Louis who was as expert at and just inspiring expert at using that sort of imagery, he had the ability to get this film to a place where it had a platform like Discovery's. For the smaller up-and-coming independent filmmaker who may not have that opportunity, what that filmmaker then has the opportunity to do though is begin to think about releasing some of the story earlier, releasing content, releasing that sort of imagery to start building that word of mouth. Like John's saying, if it's good, if it's compelling, it's going to build an audience. And if you don't have a Discovery, right, then oftentimes there's other mechanisms you're going to have to find to get your story out. And sometimes that means releasing some of the story early as a way of building audience.
All right, so thank you. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? We have time for about 2 questions, maybe. Don't be shy. This is New York. Wait, there.
For Vulcan, how did you guys transition into doing the impact stuff when you've more been in a traditional producing role?
So so my job, I should have started there. So I oversee our impact campaigns, and we've built out over the last few years a staff internally that manages a lot of our web, our social, our campaign work, and things like that. So we have a capacity in-house to manage a lot of that, those operations. So we have the ability to do it. In terms of working on a film just from an impact perspective, it was new for us and still is new for us, right? Because we weren't the filmmakers, nor were we the distributors. And so we were sort of looking at this and saying, look, this is a film that is going to have an audience. It's talking about and telling stories about all the issues that we care deeply about. And so it's worth us getting involved with. And I don't think anyone regrets doing that. But it is that sort of dance, like what is our seat at the table was always something that we were sort of working on. But the fact is, when you look up and you have this many people watching a film, that's a moment. It created a moment for us, and a moment to direct people to, like I was mentioning before, different pieces of legislation that we have underway through other departments within Vulcan, or other efforts we have underway coming up this September with the big international meetings around conservation and things like that. There's opportunities for the film there. And so it wasn't a hard transition for us to sort of take that and say, okay, we're going to use the momentum around this film and direct it towards some of the other conservation work we have going on out there.
All right, so thank you so much.